Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about what I think is the coolest looking polymer handgun ever made, and that is the Steyr M357-A1. This review will pretty much apply to all of the modern Steyr pistols, the M9A1, the L9A1, the C40A1. All of those different guns are pretty much based on this exact same platform. I just happen to have the one that's in 357 SIG because that's the kind of snowflake hipster I am. This is an Austrian produced striker-fired gun designed by Wilhelm Bubitz in the late 1990s. Before coming to Steyr, he worked at Glock, so you may see some influence there. And then after Steyr, he went on to design the Caracal pistol. And if you've seen that one, you may see some other similarities, particularly in the way the grip in this back half is designed. And he's currently running operations on that gun over in the United Arab Emirates. The original first generation of the Steyr pistols came out in 1999 as the M9, and in my opinion, they aren't nearly as cool looking. They don't have the same front end, there's no rail, the grip is a different shape. Just overall, it doesn't really mesh in this sort of techno-futuristic sci-fi way that I like so much on these later A1 guns. Apparently also those earlier ones had a lot of reliability issues, failures to feed, failures to extract. They're extremely cheap nowadays. You can usually find those original models for under about $300. They were cheap when they came out too, but they've always been a very budget-oriented gun. These, on the other hand, the A1 models, especially the later ones, are far improved in a lot of different ways, not just aesthetics, but there are also some mechanical improvements. The A1s came out in the mid-2000s, and they had things like the rail, better grip design. They didn't have a safety, which some of the very original M9s had there. Overall, the A1s are improved, but then later on, after 2013, further improvements came out, and featuring an improved extractor. And this roll pin here, it signifies that this trigger is the improved latest model, and it's got a better trigger pull than the older guns. So if you're shopping for one of these, try to get one that has this hole in it right here for the roll pin, because that will tell you that it's a more recently produced gun that has all these extra features like the fixed reliability problems with this new extractor, better trigger, looks better, the grip is cooler looking, things like that. And you can also check the date code, which you may be familiar with on German guns. They usually have a 2-letter date code. In Austria, they do it with 3 letters, meaning the month and the year. This one was made in 2014. And you can just check that too. Just Google online and you can find how that works exactly, and you can see when your gun was made. So, like I said, try to buy the newest one that you can find. Now this is the M357-A1, which means it's sort of the medium-sized model. There are several other variants that come in different sizes. There's the C9, there's the S9, there's the new L9, which is the newest model that came out just a couple years ago, and I think it might be the coolest looking one. It has a longer barrel. And if throughout this video I keep mentioning L9, M9, you know, this is in 357. The 9s obviously mean that it's in 9mm. There's also the 40 caliber version, which would be the M40, L40, C40. You know, you get the picture. There's a pattern there. So if I use it interchangeably, whatever, I think you can follow along. And the elephant in the room might be, why is this gun in 357 SIG and not 9mm? I'm not going to get into a caliber debate in this video. I think this round is really cool in a lot of ways. I'm actually planning on doing a separate video just talking about the round. And I do not think that it is the same as a 9mm plus P, but we're not going to get into that. I'm just going to treat this as a regular gun. I'll talk about shooting impressions and how it handles the hot rounds that I like to shoot out of it. But yes, this is in a weird caliber, but it's a great one too. So talk about that in a future video. Now, this being an Austrian striker-fired combat handgun, I do have to, of course, compare it to a Glock. So I have my Glock 17. Which, like I said, this is the M variant, so it really would be more competing with the Glock 19, but you can kind of get an idea of the size there. You know, there's nothing really noteworthy about the size. One of the things that stands out to me is this height here, which gives it that really aggressive, mean look that I like. I'll show you the width of it too. A little bit wider than the Glock. Weight is nice. It's about 28 ounces. It's not super light, but it's not just going to weigh you down either. So there's the comparison there on the top. So there are a few things that make the Steyr stand out, and the reason why I'm interested in them, and I think they're so great. One is the grip angle. That should stand out pretty quickly. It's actually slightly more of an angle than the Glock even, and I think that feels great. It's kind of like my Pardini. There are a few other guns that have that real swept back grip angle, and it just feels really good in the hand. It points really naturally for me. So I like the grip angle on them. And another interesting feature on the Steyr that you might have noticed already is the sight picture. It uses a trapezoidal sight system where the rear sight makes a trapezoid and you have to see the front sight, which is a triangle, inside that trapezoid. It's kind of unique. You don't really see that on any other guns. I'm sort of on the fence about whether I like it or not. It's definitely fast, I think. You pull it up and it's very quick to acquire because that dot is so, or that triangle is so big, and putting it in that space there is just it's a pretty quick system. I don't really find it to be super precise, which is generally the kind of shooting that I tend to do, is more of target shooting, at longer distances. It's not really the best for that, but as far as quick target acquisition, you pull the gun up, blasting on target, it actually works pretty well for that. So the sight system is definitely takes some getting used to, but overall I think I do like it for what it's intended to be, which is a combat sight system. Now you can actually get this gun with some 3-dot night sights. I'm not really going to switch them out probably just because I think this is one of the more interesting and unique features, so I kind of like that about it. But if you're more of a traditionalist, which I can understand, you can swap these out for night sights and pretty much have a regular sight picture. Like most striker-fired handguns, it does have a trigger safety here, which means that the trigger won't go back unless that bar in the middle is pushed. It's got a nice feel to it. It's very large, but you don't really feel it when you're pulling it, obviously. It's very soft and springy. I'll show you the mag release here, which is a little bit flush and flat maybe. Doesn't project very much, but I guess for a combat gun, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. The 357 SIG and 40 Smith & Wesson mags hold 12 rounds, and the 9mm holds 15. So it's a decent capacity, double stack magazine, nicely made. And then the other main control on the gun is the slide release here, which is sort of Glock-like in that it's kind of small, not the easiest thing to hit. Projects decently, I guess, off the side, but I like it to be a little bit bigger generally, but it's there. It's not in a bad place either, so pretty easy to work there. And I mentioned earlier that there is a rail on here, and it has what I prefer from a design standpoint. It just has the one notch there rather than the cheese grater look, so I think that really contributes to the aesthetics that I mentioned earlier, which I think are pretty great. Some modest serrations on the back and some contours here for your fingers, which normally I don't really get into, but in this case they actually work pretty well for me, so no complaints there. And the last control on the outside of the gun is this takedown lever right here. And next to that is a seldom used feature. This is a safety mechanism. When you buy the gun, it comes with this little two-pronged key. You stick that in there in those two little holes, turn it, and you can actually lock up the gun completely, making it completely inoperable. It won't fire. It's just a dead gun at that point, which I think is kind of silly and stupid. I've never used it, but then again, I'm also a reckless maniac who constantly points empty guns at the camera or muzzle sweeps myself with unloaded guns, so what do I know about safety? But anyway, I'll show you the inside of the gun, the field strip procedure. Not a whole lot interesting going on there, but it is part of the standard YouTube review process, I guess. You push this button in. It's on a spring. Push that in, flip that down, and this will come off. Only after you've fired the trigger. That's another part of it. You have to pull the trigger first, so always check to make sure it's unloaded, blah, blah, blah. So on the inside there, not a whole lot going on, like I said. Generic striker-fired mechanism there. And I'll take this out for those who are curious. One of the things that's real nice about this gun is the low bore axis, and I'll talk about that in a minute in shooting impressions, but all this stuff sets in here real nice and low. So it takes apart like pretty much any other gun. Nice thick barrel. There's the inside of that. There's the striker. So pretty standard, and pretty easy to take apart. Putting back together is the reverse. So moving on to shooting impressions, this is where I actually will talk about the caliber just a little bit because I have a few other 357 SIG guns and I've shot some other ones, and this I think is probably the best platform I've shot the caliber in because it's so flat shooting. This low bore axis and the grip angle really make themselves useful when you're shooting hot 357 SIG rounds, and I tend to shoot mostly Underwood and just kind of sort of hot ammo like that because if I'm shooting 357 SIG, I want to get my money's worth for it. Big fireballs, booms, recoil, all that stuff. So I shoot hot stuff, and this gun is extremely flat, even with the hottest rounds. I had one in 9mm before this, by the way. I traded it out to get this one in 357 SIG, but I'll probably get another in 9, and it was extremely flat shooting also. But really with these hot rounds, you really notice the difference because it's just so flat. You can pop off a bunch of rounds, and it just barely even moves. You're shooting groups like this, rapid fire, that you normally get out of a 9mm pistol, only you're getting it in 357 SIG. So that's pretty cool. Great design in that respect. I'll show you the trigger. Got to cock it, of course, because it's a striker. Trigger is pretty good for a striker also. It's not really up to the PPQ and VP9 and the P99 in my opinion. Not quite, but it's close. So there's a little bit of creep here and a break. Not much over travel either. Show you the reset. The reset's kind of weak. That is one letdown with the gun, I think. It was very quiet. I don't even know if you heard it. Soft feeling also. So a little bit of creep there. I don't know if you can see that. Be quiet for the reset. See, barely audible. Not even sure if the mic will pick that up. So, but the trigger is actually pretty good, I think, for a striker fire gun especially. It's better than a Glock, I think. Better than XD's. It's probably middle tier as far as striker fired guns go, so no complaints there with the trigger. Accuracy is great. I mentioned the sights before. I don't really find them to be great for precision shooting necessarily, at least out at distances. But for fast shooting with this flat shooting profile and the good big sights, that you whip up and it's just instantly on target with the grip angle, big sights that are real easy to see. This gun is just great for tearing out bullseyes at, defense distances very quickly. That reset isn't too long either. So it's really not that far out and you're ready to go again. So because of that, it's a very fast shooting gun. Really a joy to shoot at the range in my opinion. I've had 0 failures with this model. This is, like I said, the later variant that has the improved extractor. No problems with it whatsoever. I also had a mid-year model that was an A1, but it was before they improved the extractor and the trigger. I had one in 9mm, also no problems with that, except for when I was shooting suppressed. It just didn't really shoot that great with the suppressor on it. I have a Tyrant 9mm. What would happen is it would just not return to battery fully most of the time. That's a problem you see in a lot of striker fired guns. They just need a slightly weaker recoil spring to make sure it gets into battery, and the M9A1 just didn't really work with it too well. So in conclusion, the Steyr polymer pistols are great buys. They're highly underrated. It seems like nobody talks about them or owns them or anything, but they're great shooters, really cool looking, I think. You see them in movies a lot. Usually it's like a bad guy that has them, or it's in some sort of sci-fi context, which is cool. They just look sort of evil and menacing, which is really neat. They're not actually all that expensive either. Like this one I bought new for, I think it was under $500, like $450 or something like that. Used, you can find them for around the $400 mark. So for the price, build quality is great. Like I said, the newer ones have excellent reliability. You may have heard some reports about reliability problems, but those were typically with the older models. These newer ones have been pretty solid in my experience and from what I've heard. So I would suggest getting the newer ones, and you should be golden with that. Good price, build quality is just as good as any other polymer out there, and it's not like it's a piece of junk. It's not on Taurus levels or High Point or anything junky like that. So for the price, you're getting a really great gun. Now, one thing that it is lacking is going to be aftermarket support, holsters and just different doodads and things like that you get with Glocks and other guns. You're not going to find that with the Steyrs because they are sort of a niche boutique hipster gun, and there's just not much out there for them. But if you can live with just kind of the basic shooting experience, it's already a great gun out of the box. Maybe if you want to switch the sights out or something, but there are holsters available, just not a ton. So if you're just willing to do without all of the different aftermarket options you get on other guns, this is a great pick, I think. So that is my review of the Steyr M357-A1, simultaneously the L9A1, M9, all those other ones. Great gun, great value, very underrated, and I love shooting it a lot. If you like seeing cool looking polymer handguns that shoot wacky calibers like 357 SIG, stay tuned because I have another one coming up on a project I've been working on, and that is this. Not a USP 40. It is a USP 10mm. Been working on this one for a while. Shoots great, works great, and it's a lot of fun. So stay tuned for a shooting video and a review on this gun and lots of other interesting handguns. So thanks for watching.